Some California lawmakers are warning prices could rise if California continues to rely on foreign oil imports.
Here's a gas pump in California. Here's a gas pump in Arizona. I'm on the border of both states. Both these gas stations are directly across that border. Do you notice the price difference here?
On September 10th, 2024, Arizona and Nevada sent a rare bipartisan SOS to California. Leaders from both states warned that new refinery inventory rules could disrupt as much as 60 to 70% of their fuel supply, and they said there was no clear backup plan in place. Governor Gavin Newsom responded by pushing back on the criticism, suggesting the concerns echoed major oil industry talking points, and he signed the law anyway. So if the warning sounded that serious, why did California move ahead? And what actually happened when the feared crunch was supposed to hit? That same day, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, a Democrat, and Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo, a Republican, put politics aside and sent a joint letter to Sacramento. It was not common to see that kind of coordination across party lines. Their message was straightforward and urgent.
We have an energy crisis in our state, and it looks like it is only going to intensify.
They believed California's proposed refinery inventory mandates could ripple across state borders and create instability in fuel access throughout the Southwest. The governors pointed directly to findings from the California Energy Commission itself. According to public reports, the commission had acknowledged that new storage requirements might unintentionally tighten supply in connected markets. Arizona and Nevada emphasized that they do not have easy alternatives. Most of their fuel travels through California, mainly through the CalNev pipeline, which connects Los Angeles area refineries to major terminals in Las Vegas and Phoenix. There are no additional pipelines or marine routes capable of delivering the specialized gasoline blends required under state and federal air quality rules. In their letter, both governors highlighted consumption data referenced in the commission's findings, noting that a large share of gasoline and diesel used in Arizona and Nevada originates from California refineries. That dependency made the stakes feel very real. The governors warned that even a small drop in California's refining output could send immediate waves across state lines, pushing prices higher and slowing regional economic activity. Governor Lombardo spoke plainly, saying residents of Nevada and Arizona should not be forced to absorb the impact of what he described as California's policy decisions, especially if it meant paying more at the pump. Governor Hobbs echoed similar concerns. She noted that many Arizonans were already feeling pressure from rising living costs and said another increase in fuel prices would only add to that strain. Together, their letter called for regional coordination, offering to collaborate with California on solutions designed to protect consumers across all three states. Still, the core message was clear. Without additional infrastructure in place, any disruption in California's fuel supply could leave neighboring states in a difficult position. Their appeal was framed as more than political positioning. It highlighted how closely connected the Western fuel market has become and how regulatory changes in one state can influence conditions far beyond its borders. The situation underscored just how dependent the region is on shared energy networks. Governor Newsom responded quickly and publicly. Within hours of receiving the joint letter, he posted on social media, dismissing the warnings as exaggerated claims aligned with oil industry narratives. In that post, he argued the proposed rules were intended to stabilize prices and could ultimately save Californians significant amounts of money. He also suggested that out-of-state leaders were repeating industry arguments. The exchange soon shifted from online statements to formal communication. On September 16th, Newsom issued an official reply asserting that both governors were echoing what he characterized as oil industry talking points. The response from California was firm and direct. The wording made it clear that the concerns raised by both Arizona's Democratic governor and Nevada's Republican governor were not persuasive in Sacramento. Despite the rare bipartisan appeal, Governor Newsom moved ahead. On October 14, 2024, he signed Assembly Bill X-2-1 into law during a ceremony that also included pointed criticism of major oil companies. The new law granted the California Energy Commission expanded authority to establish minimum fuel inventory levels for refineries across the state. Facilities would be required to maintain specific amounts of gasoline diesel, and blending components to reduce the risk of sudden supply disruptions. Regulators were given flexibility to adjust those minimum levels depending on region, season, or refinery size. Companies would also need to submit detailed resupply strategies in advance of planned maintenance periods. Penalties for failing to comply were significant. Refineries that did not meet the required inventory thresholds could face fines of up to $1 million per day after a 3-day notice period. Supporters described the policy as a safeguard designed to stabilize fuel markets and protect consumers from sharp price swings. Industry representatives, however, cautioned that stricter oversight and higher compliance costs could place additional pressure on operators and influence long-term investment decisions. With the bill signed, California's refinery sector entered a new regulatory phase. The debate shifted from proposals and letters to real-world consequences. Just 3 days after ABX 2-1 became law, Phillips 66 announced plans to close its Los Angeles refinery, a facility with the capacity to process approximately 139,000 barrels per day. The timing immediately drew attention and intensified discussion across the region. Phillips 66 pointed to long-term regulatory uncertainty as a central factor in its decision. Company representatives referenced rising compliance expenses and the possibility of substantial daily fines tied to the new inventory requirements. Executives emphasized, described as increasingly complex, then in 2021, the company announced that it would be closing its California operations. The closure was not an overnight reaction, but the result of years spent adapting to California's evolving fuel regulations, which they described as increasingly complex. Then in April 2025, Valero notified state officials that it would begin the process of closing its Benicia refinery, a facility capable of handling roughly 145,000 barrels per day. With both operations preparing to wind down, California stood to lose close to 17% of its in-state refining capacity within a single year. Energy analysts noted that such a rapid reduction could tighten supply conditions and increase market volatility across the region. The connection between regulatory policy and refining capacity quickly became a topic of public discussion. In nearby states like Arizona, some residents began noticing higher fuel prices during certain periods. For households already managing rising living costs, even moderate price increases can have a noticeable impact. For example, one commuter traveling daily from Glendale to Central Phoenix estimated spending about $60 more per month on fuel compared to previous averages. On paper, that figure might not seem dramatic, but over time it adds up. For many working adults, incremental increases can mean adjusting monthly budgets, postponing discretionary purchases, or rethinking travel habits. Small business owners also monitor fuel trends closely. Delivery services, contractors, and mobile operators often depend on predictable transportation costs to maintain stable pricing. When fuel expenses fluctuate, it can create added pressure on planning and profitability. Across the Southwest, the broader conversation continues about how policy decisions, infrastructure limits, and market dynamics intersect in real time. A local trucking company operating a fleet of 10 vehicles reported that its annual fuel expenses increased by more than $15,000. For a small operation, that kind of jump can directly affect staffing plans and future growth. Owners in similar industries say the difference can influence decisions about expanding routes, investing in equipment, or postponing new hires. Delivery drivers, landscapers, and independent contractors have shared comparable experiences. Work that once provided a comfortable margin has, at times, narrowed significantly due to higher operating costs. Some businesses have adjusted by limiting service areas to stay closer to home, reducing mileage wherever possible. Others have revisited pricing structures in an effort to remain sustainable while keeping customers. Households managing tight budgets also feel the pressure. Some residents report consolidating errands, planning fewer discretionary trips, or exploring public transportation when available, even if routes are less convenient. In rural communities where driving is often essential, neighbors sometimes coordinate shared rides or reduce non-essential travel to manage expenses. Individually, each adjustment may seem modest. Collectively, however, these changes highlight how fuel costs can influence daily routines and financial planning across entire regions. For many, it becomes less about headlines and more about practical decisions made week by week. In June 2025, officials from the California Energy Commission released a public update outlining potential supply concerns. According to agency communications, refinery closures combined with new regulatory requirements could create tighter market conditions under certain scenarios. Internal discussions reference the possibility of ongoing supply constraints and price fluctuations if multiple risk factors aligned at the same time. By July, behind-the-scenes discussions were underway in Sacramento. Policymakers quietly explored options aimed at preventing additional refinery closures. Some officials considered streamlining permit processes or offering limited regulatory adjustments. Others discussed whether temporary financial incentives might help stabilize operations. During a period of uncertainty, in August, the California Energy Commission recommended delaying enforcement of certain profit cap penalties that had been central to the earlier legislation, citing concerns about overall market stability. These conversations signaled a shift in tone. Measures that once seemed unlikely were now part of active policy debate. The evolving approach reflected a broader acknowledgement that regulation alone might not ensure consistent and affordable fuel access for California and neighboring states. By December 2025, shipping activity at several California ports had noticeably increased. Tankers carrying gasoline from Asia began arriving in higher numbers to supplement local supply. Trade data indicated imports from Asian markets were up more than 15% compared to the previous year. At the same time, state agencies initiated reviews of certain domestic energy permits as part of an effort to maintain supply balance. Observers noted the contrast. California had long emphasized reducing reliance on traditional fossil fuels, yet market conditions prompted steps designed to secure sufficient gasoline availability through imports and selective in-state production reviews. The situation illustrated the complex balance between long-term energy goals and short-term supply realities. Meanwhile, research models from the University of Southern California outlined projections suggesting that, under specific high-risk scenarios, retail gasoline prices could rise significantly if additional refining capacity were lost. Environmental advocacy groups expressed concern about policy adjustments, arguing that expanding imports or production could create new environmental challenges. Others countered that maintaining stable supply was critical for economic continuity. The broader regional impact remained part of the discussion. Changes in California's refining capacity continue to influence surrounding states connected through shared infrastructure. Analysts emphasize that policy decisions in one major energy market can extend beyond its borders in unexpected ways. In corporate disclosures from 2023, Phillips 66 reported approximately $7 billion in annual profit, a figure frequently cited in public debates about the industry's financial position.